Her father slid the envelope across the table as if it was some casual favor, something unimportant, almost like tipping a waiter. "We think this is best for everyone," he said, keeping a tight, practiced smile on his face. "You've had your time, but our daughter deserves someone who can actually keep up with her life." I didn't reach for it. I just looked at it sitting there between us. My wife blinked slowly, clearly confused. "Dad, what is this?" she asked, her voice uncertain. Her mother jumped in quickly, like she had been waiting for her turn. "It's not personal, sweetheart. Really, it isn't. We just believe it's time you moved on from illusions and fairy tales." "My name is Ethan Shaw. I've been married to Lena for 3 years. To her, I've always been just a quiet man with a simple tech job, someone who drinks cheap coffee, avoids attention, and lives a modest life. That's all she ever thought I was." She has no idea that I am actually the silent co-founder of the very company where her father sits comfortably as a director. And she definitely doesn't know that almost every major decision he has made in the last 5 years has crossed my desk first, waiting for approval. This dinner wasn't random. I arranged it. This table wasn't coincidence. I picked it. And that envelope sitting in front of me. I already knew what was inside before I even touched it. Still, I opened it slowly. Inside was a check. $500,000. Payment for me to disappear from Lena's life. I stayed silent for a moment, then looked up. Her parents were watching me carefully, like they had already written the ending of this story. Like I was just a temporary character about to exit the stage. I calmly folded the check back, placed it inside the envelope, and pushed it back across the table without even opening it fully. Lena's eyes moved between me and her parents, growing more confused by the second. "What is going on here?" she finally asked, her voice rising. Her father didn't hesitate. "Sweetheart, this man, he's not your future. He's just a phase you'll grow out of." My wife looked like the words physically hit her. Her expression changed instantly, like someone had taken the ground out from under her. I stayed quiet. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to see how far they would go when they thought I had nothing. No masks, no polite filters, just truth. And tonight, they were finally showing it. "Take the money," her mother said again, more firmly this time, turning her attention directly to me. "Start over somewhere else. We can even help you settle in another city." A small breath left my nose, almost a quiet laugh, but not really amusement. "Do you honestly think I married Lena for money?" I asked slowly. Her father leaned forward slightly, folding his hands on the table. "I think men like you, men who come from nothing, always find their way into families like ours. That's what I think." "Men like me," I repeated softly. Then I turned my head toward Lena. "I didn't want to tell you like this," I said gently, my voice calm. "And I never cared about impressing them. I only ever cared about you loving me for who I am." Lena frowned deeply. "What are you even talking about?" I reached into my coat and pulled out a simple business card. I placed it on the table and slid it forward. The moment her father saw the logo on it, something in his face changed. Just slightly at first, then completely. "Our company." He recognized it instantly. I gave a small nod. "I've owned 49% of it since before you were even made director," I said quietly. The entire table froze. The silence that followed didn't feel normal. It felt heavy, like the air itself had turned solid. Lena stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was serious or if this was some kind of joke she wasn't understanding. Her father's face slowly lost color. "That's impossible," he finally said, but his voice didn't sound as confident anymore. I tilted my head slightly. "Do you want me to list the incorporation details? Or maybe remind you who approved your last bonus structure?" His mouth opened, but no words came out. Her mother let out a short, nervous laugh. "No, that can't be right. You're just a barista?" I finished for her gently. Nobody. That's what you believed, right? No one answered. I turned back to Lena again. I stayed quiet for a reason, I said. Because I wanted at least one part of my life that wasn't about leverage, money, or status. One part that wasn't controlled by people who think love has a price tag. Her father finally snapped out of his shock enough to speak. If what you're saying is true, then why come here at all? I met his eyes directly. Because I wanted to see who you really are, I said simply. When you thought I had nothing. He stood up slowly, his fists tightening at his sides. You humiliated us. I shook my head. No. You did that yourselves. Then I stood as well. My chair scraped lightly against the floor. I looked at Lena. Are you ready to leave? She didn't answer immediately, but after a pause, she nodded slowly. We walked out of the restaurant in complete silence. No one stopped us. No one followed. The air outside felt colder, even though nothing about the weather had changed. We reached the car, and only after we were driving did Lena finally speak. You were just going to keep all of this from me forever? She asked quietly. I kept my eyes on the road for a moment before answering. No, I said. But I also wasn't planning to reveal it over dinner while your father tried to buy me off like I was an inconvenience. She turned her face toward the window. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel right now, she admitted. Start with the truth, I said. You married someone who builds quietly, someone who doesn't need to show off money to feel valuable. Silence filled the car again. After a long pause, she spoke softer this time. You let me think we were struggling, she said. We weren't struggling, I replied. I just wanted a real life with you, not a performance, not something staged for approval. Later that night, her father called twice. I didn't pick up either time. After that, an email arrived. Just one line. We need to talk. This affects the board. That was the moment everything shifted again. Because now, he finally understood who he had been sitting across from. Because I didn't just co-own the company, I also held the patent for the software that pushed their latest valuation into the billion-dollar range. And unlike his loud titles and polished speeches, my name was actually printed on the legal paperwork. They had tried to remove me with a check, like I was something cheap that could be bought out and forgotten. Now they were starting to understand something they should have never ignored in the first place. Real power does not always look loud. Sometimes it stays quiet until the exact moment it speaks. The next board meeting was set for Thursday morning. I did not confirm my attendance. I did not send a reply. Instead, I arrived early, before most of them even reached the building. I was not wearing a suit like them. I wore the same simple gray sweater they used to mock when I would pick Lena up from company events. I chose it on purpose. I wanted them to recognize me clearly this time, not as an outsider, not as a guest, but as the man they once tried to dismiss like I had no place there at all. When I stepped into the glass conference room, the silence changed instantly. It was not normal silence. It felt heavy, like pressure dropping in a sealed room. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Chairs stopped moving. Even the soft sound of laptops faded away. Her father was sitting at the head of the table already, and his face turned pale the moment he saw me. Two directors leaned toward each other and whispered something quickly, then went quiet again. One of the legal team members looked like he had just swallowed something bitter and could not get it down. I walked slowly and took the empty seat at the far end of the table. Nobody told me where to sit. Nobody dared. They were waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. I simply opened my leather folder in front of me and placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was clean, flat, and simple, but it changed the entire atmosphere in the room. It was the original founder agreement. Signed by me. Co-signed by the original investors. A document most of them had only glanced at years ago and then forgotten. But I had never forgotten it. It clearly proved not only my 49% ownership stake, but also the veto rights clause that her father had conveniently ignored over time. or maybe convinced himself no longer mattered. The meeting started anyway, like they could pretend I wasn't there. I let them go through their agenda. I listened without interruption as they discussed numbers, growth projections, and expansion plans. I let them speak as if everything was already decided. Then, just as they moved to vote on a major acquisition deal, one that her father had already promised to shareholders without full approval, I calmly raised my hand. I did not raise my voice. I did not look angry. I simply said one word. Vetoed. The entire room froze immediately. It was not confusion. It was realization. I leaned back slightly in my chair, calm and steady, and looked at them one by one. "Shall we talk now?" I said. Her father's voice came out tight, controlled but clearly strained. "Ethan, this acquisition is strategic. We have already announced it publicly." "You announced it," I replied calmly, "without consulting a co-founder, without a proper board vote, and definitely without reviewing Clause 17.3. The legal advisor shifted in his seat. I saw it clearly now. He knew I was right. He just hoped no one would say it out loud. One of the directors leaned forward, suddenly more serious. "This could put us in breach of investor disclosure rules." I did not react emotionally. I did not smile or gloat. I was not there to destroy anything. I was not there for revenge. I was there to remind them of something they had slowly forgotten over time. The man they tried to quietly pay off was the same man who built and protected the core system of this entire company when most of them did not even understand basic security protocols like two-factor authentication. "I am not trying to sink the ship," I said evenly. "I am trying to steer it." Her father's fists tightened on the table. "You are making this personal." I shook my head slightly. "No. You did that the moment you slid that envelope across the table and tried to trade your daughter's life and my exit for your illusion of control." The room stayed silent after that. Nobody interrupted. Nobody spoke. The weight of it hung there, uncomfortable and unavoidable. Then one of the younger board members, someone who had stayed quiet the entire time, finally spoke up. "Maybe it is time we stop treating Mr. Shaw like a threat," he said slowly, "and start recognizing him as a partner." That sentence changed the energy in the room again. Not completely, but enough. I stood up slowly, adjusting the folder in my hand. "Good," I said. "Because starting tomorrow, I am not just your silent partner anymore. I am stepping into the light." The press release went live Monday morning exactly at 9 a.m. sharp. Ethan Shaw named co-CEO of Linhart Global after strategic board restructure. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up nonstop. Messages came in from old colleagues, former classmates, and people I had not spoken to in years. Even two of Lena's distant cousins, the same ones who once joked that she had married up, suddenly had opinions again. The story had changed overnight. I was no longer just someone standing beside the company. I was now officially steering it. I walked into headquarters that morning without an access badge. No one stopped me. The receptionist immediately stood up when she saw me and quickly looked toward the executive elevator, as if unsure of protocol. Her father was already inside the elevator when I arrived. The doors closed behind us. We did not speak at first. 5 floors passed in complete silence. Then he finally spoke. "You think you have won?" he said. I kept my eyes forward. This was never a game. He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You humiliated me." I turned my head slightly, still calm. "No. You did that yourself the moment you confused silence with weakness." The elevator doors opened. I stepped out first. That same day, I made 2 major decisions. First, I reinstated the junior developer team that had been cut last quarter purely for budget appearance. They had been talented, and everyone knew it, but they were treated like numbers instead of people. Second, I reassigned her father to a non-voting advisory position. He would still be paid. He would still be present. But he would no longer be in the room when final decisions were made. He did not argue. He did not fight it, because deep down, he understood. The man he once dismissed at dinner was now the same man signing off on how much control he actually had left. That evening, Lena met me on the rooftop of the company building. It was the same rooftop where we once talked about dreams bigger than rent, stress, and late-night ramen dinners when everything still felt uncertain. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the city lights spread across the skyline. "You really never planned to tell me?" she asked quietly. I stood next to her, hands resting on the cold metal rail. "Not until I was sure you loved me for who I am, not for a name or a position." She nodded slowly, taking that in. "And now?" she asked. I looked out at the lights with her. "Now the name is mine," I said. "But the reason it means anything is still you." She reached into her coat and pulled out the envelope from that dinner. It was still creased, still sealed, untouched. "I never opened it," she said softly. "I didn't need to." I took it from her hands and looked at it for a moment. Inside was the offer they had written, the attempt to erase me like I was replaceable. Then I tore it in half. Not for drama, not for effect, but because it never had power over me in the first place. "I'm sorry they saw you like that," she whispered. I looked at her directly. "They only saw what I allowed them to see." She smiled faintly. "Still the quiet one." I shook my head once. "Not anymore." Behind us, the company lights reflected across the glass of the high-rise building. Bright. Alive. Real. No longer hidden in someone else's shadow. I did not need to shout to prove I belonged there. I did not need to fight for attention. I simply waited long enough for the silence to become mine, and then I broke it when it mattered most.